Go. Okay. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Welcome to Peter White Public Library, virtual Peter White Public Library. My name is Marty Acketts, and one of my jobs is that I'm the adult programming coordinator for Peter White. And it's my extreme pleasure to introduce tonight's presenter for our monthly Women in Science series, Dr. Renxin Yang. When I dreamed up Women in Science back in, it was February of last year, we were in the middle of a lockdown because of the pandemic. And I really wanted to do something that sort of highlighted the contributions of science in the world, because at the time, science and scientists were the targets of a lot of people's COVID stress and fatigue. In particular, I wanted to provide a platform for women in STEM fields to speak about their backgrounds and work, to possibly inspire more young people to pursue careers in these fields. Oh, I got another person coming in. Just a second. I'm going to admit that person. So Women in Science has allowed me to learn so much about important subjects from some of the most brilliant people I've ever had the pleasure of meeting, virtually or in person. And this series has proven to me, coming from an extended family of strong and intelligent women, that the best thing to do when someone really smart starts talking is to just sit down, be quiet, and listen. And Dr. Renxin Yang is no exception to this rule. Renxin received her BA from, and now you're gonna have to correct me if I get this wrong, Jingji Normal University. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay. She got her MA in Sociology from the University of Toledo and PhD in Sociology from Bowling Green State University. She's been a lecturer and professor at several schools and colleges, including Bowling Green State University. And currently she's a full professor in the Sociology and Anthropology department at NMU, where one of her research interests is the marriage of poetry and social sciences, which I'm very excited to hear her talk about. So please join me in welcoming to Peter White Public Library, Dr. Renxin Yang.
Yeah, thank you, Martin, for inviting me to this. I feel really honored to be here to share my experience with all of you. First, I want just talk about my background. I have been in school since 5 years old. I entered school. It's been like almost 60 years in school, never been out of school. I love reading, love studying, and as a child, we had 5 girls in the family. We had a big family, 5 girls in the family and only 1 boy. So I remember from when we were very young, my parents, particularly my father, always told us, girls are just the same as boys. You can be a doctor, you can be a scientist, you can make a contribution to society. So that kind of idea was like rooted in us when we were very, very young. I was like a bookworm. I just loved reading, loved study. When I don't know how many of you are familiar with history of China, like from 1966 to 1976, that 10 years was the Cultural Revolution in China, 10 years of Cultural Revolution. During the 10 years of Cultural Revolution, there are basically no opportunities for young students to get into college, because basically schools were, before 1966, is the normal educational system where like high school graduates, they have to take the entrance exam, and those who pass the certain scores would get accepted into university. There were not many universities back then. But during the 10 years of Cultural Revolution, it became like dismantled, no longer have any opportunities. So within that 10 years, accumulated millions of the young people didn't have a chance to get into university. So by when I was a child, I always wanted to be, to enter college, to have the opportunity to receive a higher education. I wanted to, like my father said, can become a doctor or become a scientist or become even a college teacher by that line. And then not until 1976 when the Cultural Revolution ended. And then that's the first time the educational reform that returned to the pre-Cultural Revolution, like students will have the opportunity to take that entrance exam to get into college. So when you have like 10 years of accumulation of the young people, like 5.8, almost 6 million examinees, they were all like try to get into university. And that's 1976, we took that exam. But only like about 280,000 got into the university. So the exception, the rate of acceptance is about 4.8, less than 5%. It's very competitive. So when we got into college, because the opportunity didn't come easy. So once you got this opportunity, you really like, cherish every minute, study extensively. But I want to tell you a story here, because when I took the exam, because the exam, I registered for English language and literature and art, painting, because I was really into painting. I wanted to become a like a shanshui, traditional Chinese art. I wanted to become an artist like that. I studied with one of the very accomplished artists for 3 years. So I registered for art and then English too. I registered for both. But it so happened that the time for the examination they happened at the same time. So I had to pick one, either go to the other classroom, art, or go to this classroom, English, language, literature. So at the door, I had to make a big decision which would affect all my life, my whole life course. So I thought about, well, art, because art they only accept a few people, very limited opportunities. And perhaps English would be, easier for me to get in because they accept more people in English program. So I made that decision. I would just try English. So that's why I got into Jiangxi Normal University, is where I studied for my undergraduate degree. And then we finished by 1982. 1982, there were a lot of people, because there's a severe shortage of educated and intellectuals because of the 10 years of revolution disruptions. So in our library, that piled up like many books in Western languages, not cataloged. And when we graduated in 1982, the university selected some of the best students to stay in university, either start teaching or do some other work. So I was one of those stayed in university. So at first we helped to catalog all those like piled up books in Western English language, basically. And in the process, I read some sociology books. Yeah, I just became so interested in sociology. And also because over the years, I developed many questions about why people behave in certain ways, why society is structured in certain ways, had many questions. I want to find answers. And some of the answers you can, when you read the sociology books, you kind of, draw into that area. So I became very interested in sociology. And also at that time, China began to open up, that reform began to open up. And there were a few professors from the Western world. I remember one from Canada, one from England, there are two from the United States. They were all teaching in our department, the Jiangxi Normal University, the foreign language department. So we got familiar with one another, and they kind of helped me to pick like which I wanted to study sociology, because China at the time sociology program was not well developed, not well. So I wanted to study sociology in one of the English-speaking countries. So the library has a, before that I started teaching English for 5 years there in the language department. And there's a big catalog, the book. That book listed all the high school institutions in the United States and Canada. I think there were like over 3,000 of those schools listed there, the basic information. Now, I had no idea where to go to, which university to apply. So they kind of helped me to guide me through. Yeah, I remember they told me don't go to New York, it's not safe for you. I was still pretty young. So with the help, I picked the 3 universities, applied. So I got into the University of Toledo as a, like you do, you got free tuition and then you work 20 hours a week and you get a stipend. So that kind of program helped me to come here to study sociology. And then after a year and a half, and I went to Bowling Green for my PhD. And in 1995, was finishing my dissertation and started to looking for a job. So Northern was one of the schools interested in me, the areas I worked at, my dissertation and those things. One in Utah, Weber State, and there's one in New York, a few universities. So I came here for the interview in May, I think May 20 something, and there was no snow on the ground. It's very nice. And people were so friendly, like a family. Yeah, I really liked it. So that's how I came here at Northern. So now it's almost 26 years, more than 25. I taught 1 year in Bowling Green. That's my last year, finishing my dissertation, taught social psychology and the statistics. And so I came to Northern. The first few years, I was really shocked by the heavy snow and the weather kind of stuff. But gradually, I kind of like this place. It's so in tune with what I like, the lake, the woods, and so peaceful. And I just, it's in tune with what I wanted. So I stayed here basically for the past 20 years, almost 26 years now. That's my background. Yeah. So the research, So when I was doing my dissertation, at the time, there was a debate in sociology. There are 2 camps of debate about poverty. Why did people fall in poverty? So basically, there are 2 major camps. One side argues that, well, people live in poverty because of the structural barriers, lots of structural problems that people trapped in poverty. Whereas the other side this is literature, the debate in the literature. The other side argues that, well, when you live in a democratic society, everyone receives equal treatment. So whatever happened to you is your responsibility. So those 2, like in literature, you see those 2 camps debate with one another, those things. So my research, I try to pull both of them into the same model. So I developed a model with like a lot of the variables into the research. I used that National Survey of Families Households. There were like over 10,000 in subjects in the largest huge national sample. It's a quantitative analysis. So I want to see that the background factors that ascribed factors like our race, ethnicity, our gender, our family, socioeconomic backgrounds, and so on. Those we have no control. We are born into that kind of condition. And also the other factors would be we have certain control, right? We make decisions. There are those critical turning points in the life cycle. How do we make those decisions? And how do all those contribute to people's achievement in their life? And how do they affect their quality of life? And how do their quality of life, like particularly their general sense of happiness, level of self-esteem, and the level of psychological distress. And those are some of the indicators of the mental health and standard mostly mental health. Yeah. Then there's the current status like your income, your occupational prestige, and your family situation, your health condition. Those will be a current status. So that's my dissertation research. So eventually I was able to publish a couple articles from there in journals. Basically, it's an analysis about gender race differences in their early decision making, their impact on their current status and so on. So that research project lasted for a few years to get those articles published. Then I turned my research to, because China, was going through that reform. The reform, I don't know, some of you might be familiar with that. China used to be a state-planned, socialist, state-planned economy. Everything, yeah, is totally different from what we have here in the States. Then the reform was to introduce some of the capitalist elements, like competition, private ownership, private business, to integrate some of the capitalist elements into that state-planned economy. But during the transformation, many other aspects, like gender roles, like women's status, like family types, like the gaps between those who are successful and those who fall down the hierarchy. There are many major changes during that transformation. So I became interested. I want to find out how this is part of the globalization process. So I want to find out how this globalization affect gender roles, women, family. So I applied for I got 2 faculty research grants and did a few. I think I interviewed over 100 women from 18 years old to over 60 years old in different places, in remote rural areas and also in large cities like around 20 million people, Beijing, Shanghai, people from all different places. Got a lot of data, and then so I don't know. I mean, those data gave me a lot of ideas, and also gave me. I developed a new course, globalization in Asian societies, was basically from that research generated idea, developed a new course. Also got some articles published about the gender roles and women, family change, and so on. And then after that, there are other presentation papers related to those data. I didn't even finish the data. They're so rich data. One of the poems I'm going to share with you later was based on one of the interview story, really touched me. So I wrote a poem on it. And then after that project, it's not quite finished, but the peak is done. Then I began to poems. I love the poetry when I was when I was a child. I used to read and I used to write stuff. But over the years, over the decades, it kind of suppressed. Once in a while, I would have something flow out of my heart, to write down a diary. But I think around 2008, 2009, 2010, 11, 12, those few years is just erupted. All of a sudden, hundreds of poems just flow out. It's so natural. And those poems also, I think, kind of. So I got the idea as a sociologist, I want to integrate poetry, use poetic language to describe sociological observations. It's an experiment. I want to integrate. And writing poetry is very emotional. Poetry language is so beautiful. Then to be a sociologist, right, you need to be rational. You need to be analytical, be rational. So how to integrate, put them together. Done some experiments in that. I published 3 books in those try to integrate those 2 areas. Right now, I'm still working at trying to, because most of the poems were written in Chinese, some of them were English. At this point, I'm still in the process of trying to translate those poems into all English. I'm going to share with some of my friends in the English world. That's where I am at this point. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's what I have been doing. If you have any questions, I can answer those. I do want to. I have, I mentioned that I have been like since 5 years old. I have been in school, never been out of school, from being a student and then from being a teacher, professor, researcher. I met many good people, open-minded, good people, inspiring people. My first college teacher was a very good person. I wrote a poem about him. I would like to share that with you if it's okay with you, Martin. That my first college teacher.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a memory. Many of the poems were about my childhood memory. So my first college teacher. You are of humble birth, and your name wasn't recorded in any classics. Quietly you entered the world, and in silence you left it behind. Can you understand me? Can you follow me?
Yep, I'm. You have a little echo thing going on. I don't know if that's the room or something. I don't know what's going on, but I can understand you.
Okay, I'll be slow. Okay. It's in March 1978. After the 10-year Cultural Revolution finally ended, the first class of college students, the luckier ones, among millions of entrance examinees, stepped into the college classroom with honor and pride. The age gap of the same class covered 2 generations. On the first official class morning, we arrived early, full of excitement, anxiety, novelty, multi-flavored freshmen. Finding the right class, the right classroom, the right seat, we sat down quietly, waiting for the teacher's arrival. A few minutes later, suddenly, an uneasy noise emerged as you showed up at the door. And the noise, sandwiched with light laughs, one could sense in the atmosphere some awkward and disrespect in the air. You are a little short for a man, in quotes. You're a little short for a man. Upper body wearing an old blue Renxin uniform, the traditional uniform. One shoulder hanging a withered canvas bag, the other arm holding a toppling umbrella, still dripping raindrops. Your black rubber boots appearing too big for you, and your pants rolled up, one down the knee, one above the knee. In the moments of a slight disturbance, a shred of disappointment flashed through my mind. You don't look like a college professor, in quotes, but a farmer, in quotes, just back to city from the May 7th KV camp. That's what happened during the Cultural Revolution. So many of the intellectuals in the countryside, the camps. Just back to city from the May 7th KV camp, and your face looked a little scary too. In easy and the poised steps, you walked into the classroom, facing us with a big square smile, and in a calm voice said, "Good morning." Then turned to the blackboard and wrote, "To err is a human." To err is a human, yes. This long-forgotten classic truth seemed a magic injection, and upon which all of us became sedative in the seats, silence reigning in the classroom. Next, you started your lecture. You are so knowledgeable and experienced, profound thoughts and simple philosophy melting together in clear and concise English phrases and lines, so inspiring that you tightly grasp our attention and desire for more learning. Your teaching seems magnetic, inspirational, and awakening for our mind and soul. By the end of the semester, we felt that how lucky we were to be your students. Behind your humble, modest appearance, we see your integrity and flowing wisdom, your unselfishness, uprightness, honesty, kindness, along with sharp perceptions. They nourish countless hungry young minds. Later on, ever since you transferred to another college, we no longer heard from you. Not until several years later, the sad news came that you passed away, not even 60 years of age, from extreme fatigue and heart infection. At the turning point, when we first saw you in the classroom, the full-scale social reconstruction was underway after the destructive years of chaotic, those Cultural Revolution years. As one of the few rare talents in English language in the province, you bent yourself to teaching, exerted yourself to the utmost. At the same time, you are the sole bread earner of a large family. Your wife illiterate from countryside with 5 kids, often financially distressed. As a speedy burning candle, you burned your last drop of your life ahead of time. Perhaps you do not remember me, one of the hundreds, even thousands of students you used to teach. On that gloomy, sad day, I asked for an excuse from work to attend your memorial service. On that several meter-long white cloth were packed with names of your friends, relatives, students, colleagues, I printed my name, full of respect and gratitude for you, a good person, a model teacher. Who knows how many students you have taught, you had taught, who nowadays scattered on all corners of the earth. Decades later, today, on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, a student you used to teach wrote down these words from memory to salute your spirit in heaven. So that's a memory of my first college teacher. I'm share another one. Another one is one of the interviews of family. What happened to that family really touched me. So after I got back, I wrote down that. Find the share button.
Yeah, the share button is down at the bottom. It's a green button, at least it is on mine. There you go. Yep. Oh, nope, you turned off your video. There you go. Nope. It's like a few buttons over on the bottom. It says chat and then share screen.
I think there's only more here. More, okay, share screen, okay. All right, okay. Share. Yeah. So this one was based on the family I interviewed. This is a sociological, I kind of integrate sociological concepts into this poem. So the title is Why Did You Take the Road of No Return? There are 2 parts. The first part is the dream catcher. Second part is that about his in the sociological aspect. The dream catcher. So one day in the early 1990s, You followed the footsteps of millions of migrant workers who said goodbye to their families in the villages they left behind and came to X city in the south, hoping to change your fate. I just want to protect the privacy, so I didn't specify the name of the city. Hoping to change your fate. You found jobs on the mushrooming construction sites, sweating during the day until late nights in sunlight or rain, huddled cold winter and hot summer in crowded shacks, swallowing paper blocks of quick lunch with flies and mosquitoes at night, tolerated bullies, fraud, and discrimination, and send most of your hard-earned money back home in a remote village. In just a few years, with the money sent home, your family built a two-story house. Plus, you brought back a wife, a young, pretty girl whom you met and worked together in the South. Life was hard because few jobs could be found close to the village. After your second daughter was born, you said goodbye again southward, leaving your young wife, daughters, and your old father behind. You moved around wherever jobs were, saved every penny you earned, denied yourself pleasures in the cities, and sent most of the money back every month to your family. With more hands than jobs and competition intense, you grabbed every opportunity you could get and often worked a sleepless night. Then you became a truck driver, a better paying job, but a tragedy in disguise. One day after weary hours on the road, along with choking traffic congestion, your unexpected accident was there waiting. You were at fault, so they said that as long as you pay a lump sum of money, all could be settled without calling the police. Wounded yourself, but with no other choice, you agreed and asked your wife for family savings to settle the misfortune. To your utmost despair, however, news arrived with no money. Instead, your wife took all the family savings, changed your children's surname, and disappeared. Just over 30 years of age, you had worked so hard to build a dream, now shattered, with nothing left at home, except disabled you and your old father, living a sad, lonely life together. One morning, you didn't come down for breakfast. Your father called you several times, but no answer, so he managed to get upstairs, only to find your body hanging down the beam, stiff, too late. Your younger sister, who married out to a faraway province, came back to help with the funeral and sent your father to a home for the elderly. She paid for the time being and expected to sell the house to cover the rest of his living expenses. The house, just a few years old, soaked with your sweat and blood, however, was hard to sell on the market, as rumors running nearby that it's haunted and no one would dare to live there. So the house was hard to sell, but later, a few years later, eventually the house was sold. Eventually later. So part two, how to understand you. During the 19th century, in Durkheim's time, Durkheim is one of the founders of sociology, or French sociologist. So in his time, it was generally believed that those who committed suicide were psychologically ill. When a close friend took his own life, Durkheim, who knew his friend too well, so simply refused to believe that the cause was psychological illness. This tragedy motivated his 7-year European country tour to study on social causes of suicide. His classic study discovered the major patterns, groundbreaking on macro social causes. Why are suicide rates higher in cities than in rural areas? Why are males suicide rates higher than those of women? Why do singles commit suicide more frequently than those who live with companions? Why are senior suicide rates higher than their younger counterparts? And there are effects of religion. Why among Christians suicide rates are higher for the Protestants than Catholics? Based on extensive case analysis, Durkheim categorized suicide in 4 types: altruistic, egoistic, anomic, and fatalistic. Each of these look alike but different. You, the peasant dream catcher, belong to which type? In addition, there are many others who took their own lives, such as the great poet Xu Yuan. Xu Yuan is one of the greatest poets in Chinese history. The famous novelist Lao She, also he was, some people say if he's gonna die, to be like a Nobel Prize earner, very accomplished. The philosopher X, the professor Y, who taught literature and so on and so forth. So what's the reason you cut your own life short? Now that the life is so valuable that you could only own it once and never return once it's taken, nor can it be copied or replaced. What can be done to help prevent or reduce the number of people who walk on the road of no hope? What can we do to help those who want to continue to live through their natural life course? So the reason why I'm trying to integrate sociological theory on suicide to apply to this peasant migrant worker is yeah, those are the 2 things I want to share.
So I don't know, does anybody have any questions for Renxin? You can unmute and ask any questions, or you can put them in the chat. And I'm sure she'd be more than happy to answer any questions from anybody. Oh. It's pretty silent, but it usually happens that way. So I have one question. For me, as I'm listening, it's so interesting that you sort of combine your research with your poetry. And I'm just wondering, did you find when you were like writing poems about that subject matter that you were researching, did it somehow give you a different understanding or bring you to a different understanding of what you were writing about and researching because you were using a poetic form to write about it?
Yeah, like the example, when I did the interview that what happened with the family, I was emotionally, I was I felt very sad for this family. But then when I think about it again, he was not the only one, because there are many people from different walks took their lives. Like some of those intellectuals, like poets or philosophers, committed suicide. So what's the explanation? Then one explanation would be Durkheim's finding. He traveled to 7 different European countries and collected all data to try to explain why people took their lives. So he found that the social facts, the social facts basically said it's a bond. When the social bond is too weak, people feel so isolated, feel like extremely distressed, despair, isolation. In those situations, people could take their lives. On the other hand, when the bond is too strong, overly strong, people felt they had no freedom. They also take their lives when the bond, like some of the religious cults, the bond is too overly strong. because also, so that's some of his findings.
Yeah, yeah. A couple questions here. We got a question from BG. He said, did you know what a strange little corner of America you were coming to when you first arrived? And have you since come to see the contrast between life here and other areas in America?
Yeah, interesting question. You know, geographically, this area is, remote. Actually, when I was applying for the job, I asked professors to write reference letters for me. So one of the professors told me, so why do you go there? It's like China's Inner Mongolia, like very, very, very remote. Yeah. However, I think since today's world, right, the internet basically doesn't matter where you are, the world is connected together. You don't feel, you're mentally, you're not isolated. And then also in a place like Marquette, there's peace, which you don't find it in urban areas. Very peaceful here. I'm very into Taoism. Yeah, harmony with nature. When I walk in the woods, I feel so peaceful. I feel homey when I walk in the woods. Yeah, it's a very specialist place, I think.
And I always say that living in the UP, it's a great place for poets to live because there's just so much, to inspire you from this particular area. So, from Emily, she asks, what kind of poetry do you like writing? Do you like to follow meter or rhyme scheme, or are you strictly a free verse poet?
When we grew up, we recite many classical poems by, in Chinese history, Tang Dynasty was the peak of poetry. Tang Dynasty and Song Dynasty, another peak. And Dynasty painting, reaching Song Dynasty. Growing up, we recite a lot of those. But I like this free writing. Whatever flows out of my heart is natural. Because the classical poetry, you have to follow those rules. Like every sentence of 5 words or 7 words, and you rhyme with each one. It's very you don't feel that like a free expression. Just free writing, whatever flows out, I just write down. Yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions they would like to ask? Oh, here's one from Bella. Do you choose to write in English, or do you choose it like to write in Chinese and then translate all the time, or do you write in English? And also, have you published somewhere? Is your poetry like available in book form somewhere?
Yeah, I did my books. Amazon, yeah. See, they kind of some of the poems just flow out in Chinese. Some of the poems just flow out in English. I don't force myself to write in any particular language. It's just how it's there, don't come out. Yeah. Like I remember a few years ago when we had an extremely cold winter, just a few years ago. I think someone sent an email to all of us about a poem. So I responded with a poem. It just flew out in English, just a little thought. Please do not be disturbed. We climb onto the bed. We climb into the day. Between darkness and night, we produce love and hate. It just flew out in the
Yeah. And do you have a book of poems or that's available?
Yeah, let me show you this one. Let me try to. Oh. This,
Are you trying to share screen again or?
yeah, I'm trying to show you this.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, there you go. Yep, it's up now.
These are the first one is floating window flowers, the mostly Chinese or some English ones. It is by Northeastern University Press. And then this one, Native Spirit. I put a copy in the library here, 2013 by Zhejiang University. Native Spirit, mostly in Chinese or some English ones. And this one, Light and Shadow, is my third one, Conversation of the Soul, also mostly in Chinese. The last part is English. Currently, I'm working at those, I'm translating this one, Floating Flowers in English, and working at the revised another book, Between Heaven and Earth.
Okay. All right. You know, I have a question, because I mean, working in the sciences, do your colleagues or other people who work in sociology, do they find it strange that you like write about your subjects in poetic form as opposed to like you know, the kind of papers that you would see at conferences and things like that?
You know, actually, there I don't know, some of you might be familiar with C. Mills. C. Mills is a very, very influential sociologist. Yeah, he actually he talked about this, like when we express sociology in poetic language, it's become fuller, not just those cold jargons, but like it's not a skeleton, you have meat, you flesh. Yeah, he actually advocated this sociology. Not many sociologists write poems, there are a few of them. It's not, yeah, it's not very popular. I guess you have to be a poet to be able to enjoy that.
Yeah.
I wish there were more. I wish more people could appreciate that.
You know, because there's such in higher education, especially, there's always this sort of like strange divide I find between people who are in the sciences and the people who are in humanities, and I just don't understand why that kind of tension exists, and that because I think both could feed off each other like it does in your work, and sort of illuminate the stuff that's being that you're researching or writing about. So
I guess people from different backgrounds, they have different understanding of readers. For example, a short poem, you and me, face to face, walking backwards, further and further until it's an ocean away. The vaster the ocean, the closer we get back to back, as the earth is round. So it's just a few sentences, but different people have totally different understanding of this.
Yeah.
As my students give all kinds of interpretations to this.
Beverly, you had a question? Yeah, go
yes,
ahead.
I do. Hi, Renxin. So are you writing in Chinese and then translating into English? Is that pretty much how it goes?
Usually just whatever comes to flow.
Oh, okay.
So they came out in Chinese. I just write Chinese. Some of them they just came out in English.
Oh, good. Does it seem more natural to you then?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. You know, I deal with those issues all the time.
Yeah. There was a stage like when we were learning English.
Yeah.
We were learning English, and then you have to go through that. Like whenever I remember when I just came to America. That's already I already taught 5 years English in Jiangsu University. I should have no problem here, right? But the first semester, the first 2 months, I couldn't speak. I couldn't take notes. Everything I have to like hear, what does it mean? I have to translate. But that went by very fast. That went by fast. So that stage, and then naturally just English all over.
Mhm,
the kind of context make you.
mhm. Thank you.
All right. Does anybody have any final questions they would like to ask? At all? Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. This is a really wonderful showing for Renxin and for poetry. I always appreciate when people show up when poetry is one of the subjects. But this has been really fascinating. I love hearing that how you combine both your scientific background and your artistic background and how they feed off each other. I think that's really, really fascinating. So I really appreciate you taking the time tonight to share your story with us and your work with us, Renxin. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And I want to thank everybody for coming tonight to Women in Science. And coming up next week, we have a concert at the library. And we also have one other thing that it is just went out of my head. What else? So go to the library calendar, Peter White Public Library calendar. There's next month, Renxin has sort of kicked this off for poetry, but next month, for authors reading virtually, we have the poet Dennis Henriksen, who's going to be reading from his new book of poems for authors reading virtually. So if you love the poetry or love poetry, or even if you don't love poetry, show up for it, because I think that you're really going to enjoy it just as much as we've enjoyed Renxin's work here tonight. So thank you all for coming, and I hope that you all stay safe and have a wonderful night. And again, Renxin, thank you so much for this time that you shared with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Renxin.
Thank you.